It was a bright, sunny Saturday morning, the kind where the birds chirp loud and the air smells fresh. Timmy Jackson, a 12-year-old kid with messy brown hair and a big smile, stood in his front yard feeling super proud. He had just finished building something special, a window box for his mom. Now, if you don't know what a window box is, it's like a little wooden shelf you stick under a window. Timmy had painted it brown and filled it with dirt, then planted bright red flowers that spilled over the edges like a waterfall of color. It wasn't big or fancy, but to Timmy, it was perfect. It made their boring little house look happy and alive, like it was smiling at the world. Timmy wiped his sweaty hands on his old jeans and stepped back to look at his work. The flowers bobbed in the breeze and the wood smelled new and earthy. He grinned to himself. This was a gift for his mom, who worked hard every day at the grocery store. She always came home tired, her feet sore from standing, but she still found time to hug Timmy and ask about his day. He wanted to surprise her with something pretty, something to make her smile when she pulled into the driveway. And boy, did that window box do the trick. The red flowers popped against the plain white wall of their house like a splash of paint on a blank page. Now Timmy wasn't the loud type. He wasn't the kid who ran around yelling or showing off. No, Timmy was quiet. He liked to keep to himself, tinkering with things in the garage or messing around with tools his dad left behind before he moved away. Timmy could fix a broken toy or build a birdhouse out of scraps. His hands were always busy and his mind was always thinking. The other kids on the block, they didn't pay him much attention. He wasn't on the soccer team or riding a shiny bike. He was just Timmy, the kid who stayed out of trouble and kept his head down. And that was okay with him. He didn't need a crowd cheering him on. He liked his little world just fine. The street they lived on, Maple Lane, was pretty normal. Small houses lined up in a row, some with green grass, some with patchy yards. Kids rode scooters and dogs barked at squirrels. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other, at least a little. Old Mr. Henderson waved from his porch every morning. Mrs. Lee grew roses in her garden that smelled so good you could catch a whiff from across the street. And then there were the neighbors who didn't talk much, just nodded when you passed by. It was quiet most days, peaceful even, but not everyone liked it that way. Not everyone liked things to be calm and happy. See, while Timmy was admiring his window box, someone else was watching, not in a nice way like how you watch a puppy play. No, this was a sneaky, grumpy kind of watching. Someone on Maple Lane didn't like that window box one bit. They didn't like how it sat there all bright and new, making Timmy's house stand out. To them, it wasn't cute or pretty, it was trouble. It broke some rule they made up in their head and they weren't going to let it slide. Who could it be? A cranky old man, a jealous kid, a busybody neighbor with nothing better to do? Hang on tight, because this story about to get wild. Timmy didn't notice the watcher yet. He was too busy kicking a pebble down the driveway, thinking about how his mom would react. Would she gasp? Would she hug him? He hoped she'd love it. He'd spent all week on that box, hammering nails and planting flowers with his own hands. His fingers were still stained with dirt and he had a splinter in his thumb, but it was worth it. He could already picture her face lighting up when she saw it. That's what kept him going, making his mom happy. She deserved it after all she did for him. The sun climbed higher, warming the air. A bee buzzed around the flowers and Timmy watched it land on a petal. He liked how alive the window box felt, like it was part of the house now. He didn't have a big allowance, just a few dollars he saved from helping Mr. Henderson rake leaves, so the wood came from scraps in the garage and the flowers were cheap ones from the store. But Timmy didn't care about that. To him, it was a masterpiece. He wasn't trying to show off or make anyone jealous. He just wanted to do something nice. That's who Timmy was, a kid with a big heart and quiet hands. But not everyone saw it that way. Down the street, a pair of eyes narrowed. They belonged to someone who didn't like change, didn't like things being different. This someone had a loud voice and a bossy way about them. They walked around Maple Lane like they owned it, telling people what to do. Cut your grass, they'd yell. Move that bike, they'd complain. Most folks just rolled their eyes and went along with it to keep the peace. But Timmy's window box, that was a line in the sand. And to this watcher, it wasn't just a box with flowers, it was a problem. A big, red, flowery problem. Timmy didn't know it yet, but trouble was brewing. He bent down to pull a weed from the dirt near the house, humming a little tune. The day felt perfect, blue sky, warm sun, and a job well done. He didn't hear the footsteps coming closer. He didn't see the shadow creeping across the grass. He was too caught up in his own little victory. That window box was his win, his way of saying, I can make things better. And it did look better. Even the mailman slowed down as he passed, giving a quick nod like he approved. Timmy noticed that and felt a spark of pride. Maybe other people liked it too. Maybe it wasn't just for his mom, it was for the whole street to enjoy. But that watcher, they didn't enjoy it, not one bit. They stood there, arms crossed, staring at the window box like it was a monster. To them, it didn't belong. It wasn't part of the rules they loved so much, rules about how yards should look, how houses should be. Timmy's house was small and plain, sure, but it was theirs. He and his mom kept it clean, paid the bills, and didn't bother anyone. So why did this window box make someone so mad? What was it about a few flowers that got under their skin? You're about to find out, because this story's got a twist you won't believe. Picture this: Timmy, still clueless, grabbed a watering can from the porch. It was an old metal one, dented and rusty, but it worked just fine. He filled it at the spigot and carried it back to the window box, splashing water on his sneakers by accident. He didn't care, he was too happy. The flowers perked up as the water hit them, shining in the sunlight. Timmy stepped back again, hands on his hips, feeling like a real gardener. He didn't know much about plants, but he figured they needed water and sun, and he could handle that. Simple, right? That's how Timmy liked things, simple and good. The street was quiet now, except for a dog barking a few houses down. A breeze rustled the trees and the leaves made a soft shushing sound. Timmy took a deep breath, smelling the wet dirt and the flowers. He loved moments like this when everything felt calm and right. He didn't need a lot to be happy, just him, his mom, and a little house on Maple Lane. And now that window box. It was like a cherry on top of a sundae, small, but it made everything sweeter. But that calm, it wasn't going to last. Not with that watcher out there, plotting and grumbling. They didn't see a cherry on a sundae. They saw a mess, a rule breaker, something to fix, and they weren't the type to let it go. They were the type to make noise, to stir things up. Timmy didn't know it yet, but his quiet Saturday was about to get loud, really loud. Who was this watcher? Why did they care so much about a kid and his flowers? Stick around, because this is where it gets good. Something big is coming, and Timmy's window box is just the start. The sun was still shining bright that Saturday morning when Trouble walked right up to Timmy's yard. Her name was Karen Phillips, and she was the neighborhood's unofficial boss. You know, the kind of person always sticking their nose where it doesn't belong, always finding something to grumble about. Karen lived 3 houses down from Timmy, in a big white house with perfect grass and curtains that never moved. She acted like she ran Maple Lanes, like every tree, every mailbox, and every blade of grass had to follow her rules. And if they did, oh boy, you'd hear about it. Karen wasn't quiet like Timmy. No way, she was loud and bossy, the type who'd yell at kids for riding bikes too fast or bang on your door if your trash can stayed out too long. She wore bright pink sneakers and a sun hat even when it wasn't that hot. Her hair was always piled up high like a tower, and her voice, it could wake up the whole street. Most people just nodded and smiled when she came around, hoping she'd go away fast. But not today. Today, Karen had her eyes locked on Timmy's window box, and she wasn't happy. She strutted across the street, her pink sneakers slapping the pavement, her arms swinging like she was on a mission. Timmy was still in his yard, brushing dirt off his hands, when she stopped right in front of him. Her lips were pressed tight together, all wrinkly and sour, like she'd just sucked on a lemon. She pointed one long, bony finger at the window box, the little wooden thing Timmy had worked so hard on, with its red flowers spilling out. That box is an eyesore. She snapped, her voice sharp and loud. It's ugly and it doesn't belong here. Timmy froze. He looked up at her, his hands still brown from planting, little bits of dirt stuck under his nails. The window box wasn't ugly to him, it was pretty, with those bright flowers his mom would love. But Karen, she acted like it was a pile of garbage, like it was breaking some big law. She kept going, her finger jabbing the air. It's against HOA rules, she said, her voice getting louder. We have standards on this street, and that thing doesn't fit. I'm calling the cops if it's not gone by noon. Now the HOA was this group that made rules for the neighborhood, like how tall your grass could be or what color your house could be painted. Timmy didn't know much about it. He was just a kid, not someone who read rule books. But Karen, she loved those rules. She carried them around in her head like a list of treasures, ready to pull them out whenever she wanted to boss someone around. To her, that window box was a rebel, a troublemaker, something that dared to be different. And Karen didn't like different. Timmy didn't say anything. He just stood there staring at her. His mouth stayed shut, but his eyes, they were wide and sharp, watching her every move. He saw how her face got red as she yelled, how her hat wobbled a little when she shook her head. He noticed the way she kept pointing, like she could scare the window box into disappearing. Most kids might cry or run inside if someone yelled like that, but not Timmy. He was quiet, sure, but he wasn't weak. He stood his ground, his sneakers planted in the grass, his hands still dirty from his hard work. Karen didn't care what Timmy thought. She didn't even look at him long enough to see his face. To her, he was just a kid who didn't matter, someone she could boss around. She thought she'd won already. Noon. She barked one more time, then spun around and marched back to her house, her pink sneakers stomping loud. She probably thought Timmy would rip the window box down right then and there, scared of her big threats. She thought she was the queen of Maple Lane and everyone had to listen. Oh, how wrong she was. So wrong. Timmy watched her go, his eyes still sharp. He didn't move, he didn't yell back or cry or anything. He just stood there, the breeze blowing his messy hair, the sun warm on his face. The window box sat under the window, its flowers swaying a little, like they didn't know they'd just been called ugly. To Timmy, they weren't ugly. They were his project, his gift, his little piece of pride. Why did Karen hate it so much? What was so bad about a few flowers? He didn't get it, but he didn't need to. He wasn't going to let her ruin his day, not yet. Across the street, Karen disappeared into her house, slamming the door so hard the sound bounced down Maple Lane. Timmy could imagine her inside, picking up her phone, ready to tattle to someone, maybe the HOA people, maybe the cops. She loved making a fuss, loved being in charge. But Timmy, he wasn't scared, not even a little. He bent down and picked up his watering can, the rusty one he'd used earlier. He splashed some water on the flowers, watching the dirt turn dark and wet. He wasn't going to tear it down. Not for Karen, not for anyone. The clock was ticking, though. Noon wasn't far away, just a couple hours. Karen's threat hung in the air like a storm cloud, dark and heavy. Would she really call the cops over a window box? It sounded silly, but Karen wasn't the joking type. She meant it, and that made things tense. Timmy didn't know what would happen next, but he wasn't backing down. He worked too hard, cared too much. That window box wasn't just wood and flowers, it was his. And he wasn't going to let some loud lady take it away. The street felt different now. A little quieter, a little tighter, like everyone was holding their breath. Mr. Henderson peeked out from his porch, his old eyes squinting at Timmy's house. Mrs. Lee watered her roses, glancing over like she'd heard Karen's yelling. The neighbors knew something was up. They knew Karen, knew how she got when she was mad, but they didn't know Timmy, not really. They didn't know what he was thinking, what he was planning. Karen thought she had him beat, thought she'd scared him good. But Timmy's silence wasn't fear, it was something else, something stronger. So there it was, Karen versus Timmy, the loud bossy lady against the quiet kid. She thought she held all the power, with her rules and her threats. She thought she could snap her fingers and make that window box vanish. But she didn't see what Timmy saw, she didn't know what he knew. The tension was building, like a rubber band stretching tight. Something was going to snap, and soon. What would happen at noon? Would the cops really show up? Stick around, because Karen's about to learn she picked the wrong kid to mess with. The sun was high in the sky now, and the clock was ticking closer to noon. Timmy stood inside his house, peeking out through the window where his flower box sat. The red flowers still looked bright and happy even after Karen's big fuss, but things were getting serious. Karen Phillips, the loud lady from down the street, wasn't messing around. She promised to call the cops if that window box wasn't gone by noon, and guess what? She kept her promise. Karen marched out onto her porch, her pink sneakers squeaking, her sun hat wobbling on her head. She held her phone up high like it was a trophy and dialed 911. She didn't care who heard her, she wanted everyone to hear. "Hello, yes, this is an emergency." She barked into the phone, her voice loud enough to bounce off every house on Maple Lane. "There's an illegal structure at 24 Maple Lane. It's a wooden box with flowers and it's breaking all the rules. You need to send someone right now." She stood there, one hand on her hip, glaring across the street at Timmy's house like she'd already won. Timmy watched her from inside, his nose pressed against the glass. He didn't move much, just stood there, quiet as ever. His hands were still dirty from planting, and his sneakers were still wet from watering the flowers. He didn't say a word, didn't yell back, didn't even frown, but his eyes, they were busy. They followed Karen's every move, watching how she waved her arms and stomped her feet. He saw the way her face got redder with every word she shouted. Timmy was quiet, sure, but he wasn't dumb. He was paying attention. Here's the thing, though, something was off, something Karen didn't see. Down the street, just a few houses away, a police car sat parked by the curb. It wasn't flashing its lights or making noise. It was just there, quiet and still, like it was waiting for something. The windows were dark, so you couldn't see inside, but it was definitely a cop car. Timmy noticed it right away. He'd seen it roll up earlier that morning, before Karen even started yelling. It didn't leave. It didn't move. It just sat there, but Karen, she didn't notice a thing. She was too busy glaring at that window box, her eyes locked on those red flowers like they were her worst enemy. Karen hung up the phone with a big huff and crossed her arms. She smirked a little, like she'd just solved the biggest problem in the world. She probably thought the cops were on their way now, ready to bust Timmy and his illegal window box. She probably pictured them pulling up with sirens blaring, telling Timmy to tear it down or else. To her, this was a done deal. She scared that quiet kid into listening, and soon that ugly box would be gone. That's what she thought anyway. But Timmy, he wasn't scared, not one bit. He was waiting. Waiting for what? Oh, you'll see, it's a good one. The minutes ticked by, slow and steady. Timmy stayed by the window, his breath fogging up the glass a little. Outside, the street was quiet, too quiet, almost like it knew something big was coming. Mr. Henderson rocked in his chair on his porch, squinting at Karen's house. Mrs. Lee poked her head out her door, holding her watering can, her eyes darting between Timmy's yard and that police car down the street. Even the dog that always barked stopped for a minute, like it was listening. Everyone could feel it. Something was brewing, something Karen didn't expect. Karen paced back and forth on her porch, checking her watch. 10 minutes to noon, she muttered to herself, loud enough for Timmy to hear through the window. That boy better be taking that thing down right now or he's in big trouble. She tapped her foot, her pink sneaker making a little thump-thump sound on the wood. She thought she had Timmy right where she wanted him, trapped, scared, ready to give up. But Timmy didn't move. He didn't run outside with a hammer to smash the window box. He didn't cry or call his mom. He just stood there watching, waiting. Inside his head, Timmy was thinking. He didn't know everything, not yet, but he knew something Karen didn't. That police car wasn't random. It wasn't just parked there for no reason. Timmy had seen stuff on Maple Lane before. He'd heard the neighbors whisper about Karen, how she yelled at people, how she messed with their yards when they weren't looking. He'd even seen her once, late at night, sneaking around with a pair of scissors near Mrs. Lee's roses. Timmy didn't say anything then. He was quiet, remember, but he watched, he remembered. And now, with that cop car sitting there, he started to wonder, was it here for the window box or something else? Karen didn't wonder. She didn't think about anything but winning. She leaned over her porch railing, staring at Timmy's house, waiting for him to come out and surrender. 5 minutes, she shouted, like she was counting down to a big explosion. You're running out of time, kid. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the quiet street. A few birds flew out of a tree, scared off by her yelling. But Timmy didn't flinch. He wiped the fog off the window with his sleeve and kept his eyes on her. He wasn't tearing anything down. He wasn't giving up. He was waiting. The police car still didn't move. No lights, no sound, just sitting there like a shadow. Karen didn't see it because she was too busy staring at the window box. She didn't think about why it was there or what it might mean. She was sure the cops were coming for Timmy, ready to back her up. She thought she was the hero of this story, saving Maple Lane from a terrible flower box. But Timmy knew better. He didn't know all the pieces yet, but he could feel it. Something was coming, and it was what Karen thought. The clock kept ticking. Noon was so close now you could almost taste it. The air felt heavy, like before a storm. Karen's packing got faster, her muttering louder. "He's gonna regret this," she said under her breath, shaking her head. She thought she'd scared Timmy good, thought he was just too stubborn to admit it. But Timmy wasn't stubborn. He was smart. He was quiet, sure, but that didn't mean he was weak. He was watching, waiting, letting Karen dig her own hole. What was he waiting for? What did that police car mean? You're about to find out, because this story's heating up fast. The clock hit 12:01 and Karen Phillips was ready to win. She stomped across the street from her porch, her pink sneakers slapping the ground hard. Her sun hat wobbled and her face was all scrunched up with a big smug smile. She'd called 911 about Timmy's window box, and now she was marching over to his house to gloat. She thought she'd scared him good, thought that little wooden box with red flowers would be gone by now. She couldn't wait to rub it in his face, tell him she was right, that she was the boss of Maple Lane. Oh, she was so sure she'd won, but she didn't know what was coming next. Timmy watched her from his window, his nose still close to the glass. He didn't move, didn't say a word. His hands were in his pockets and his eyes were sharp like always. Karen got closer, her shadow stretching across the grass. She opened her mouth, ready to yell something mean, probably "I told you so," or "take it down now." But before one word could come out, something happened, something big. The two police officers stepped out of that quiet car parked down the street, the one Karen hadn't even noticed. The officers were tall, wearing dark blue uniforms with shiny badges. One had a hat pulled low over his eyes and the other carried a clipboard. Their boots clicked on the pavement as they walked, not toward Timmy's house but straight toward Karen. Her big smile froze. She stopped stomping, her sneakers squeaking one last time. The officers didn't look at the window box. They didn't look at Timmy. They looked right at her. "Karen Phillips?" the first officer asked, his voice strong and serious. Karen's face went white, like all the color drained out of it. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out at first. Yes," she finally stammered, her voice wobbly. She took a tiny step back, her sun hat tilting a little. She didn't look like the bossy lady anymore. She looked small, confused, maybe even scared. The officer with the clipboard stepped closer. He flipped a page and started reading. "We've got a warrant," he said, his words clear and loud. "Multiple complaints about you harassing neighbors, tampering with property, even cutting down Mrs. Lee's roses last month." Karen's eyes got huge. She shook her head fast, like she could shake the words away. "What? No, that's not true," she squeaked, her hands flapping in the air. But the officers didn't budge. They just stared at her, calm and steady. The one with the hat crossed his arms. "We've got proof," he said, "lots of it." Karen's mouth dropped open again and she looked around like she wanted someone to help her. But the street was quiet. No one was coming to save her now. Timmy leaned out his window a little more, his messy hair blowing in the breeze. A tiny grin crept onto his face, not a big, loud one, but a small, sneaky one. He didn't cheer or shout, that wasn't his style, but that grin, it said everything. Turns out, Timmy wasn't just a quiet kid who liked flowers. He was smart, really smart. For weeks, he'd been watching Karen, listening to her nosy rants, seeing her sneak around the neighborhood. And he'd done something about it, something secret. Hidden right there in that illegal window box was a little camera. Yep, a camera, small and black, tucked between the red flowers where no one would see it. Timmy had set it up weeks ago after Karen started picking on people too much. He'd borrowed it from his cousin, who used it to film skate tricks. It was tiny, but it worked great. Every time Karen came by to yell or complain, that camera caught her. Every time she banged on a door or pointed her bony finger, it recorded her. Even that night, she crept over to Mrs. Lee's yard with scissors and snipped those pretty roses. It saw that too. Timmy had saved it all, every second, on a little chip inside the camera. He didn't tell anyone at first, not his mom, not the neighbors, not even Mrs. Lee. He kept it quiet, like he always did, but he wasn't just sitting there doing nothing. He'd taken that chip to Mr. Henderson, the old man down the street who knew about computers. Together, they made a video, a long one, with all of Karen's mean moments. Timmy didn't want to be loud about it. He didn't want a fight, but he was tired of Karen being a bully. So he sent that video to the police, along with a note saying, "She's causing trouble on Maple Lane." That's why the cop car was there. It wasn't for the window box, it was for Karen. The neighbors had been complaining too, Mrs. Lee about her roses, Mr. Henderson about his knocked-over trash cans, even the mailman about Karen yelling at him for no reason. Timmy's video was the last piece, the proof they needed. And now, here they were, standing in front of her, ready to take her away. Karen's hands shook as she tried to talk. "This is crazy," she yelled, her voice high and squeaky. "It's that kid, he's the problem, look at that ugly box." She pointed at Timmy's window, her finger wobbling, but the officers didn't even glance at it. The one with the clipboard shook his head. "This isn't about a window box," he said, "it's about you." He pulled out a pair of shiny handcuffs and Karen's eyes got even bigger. "No, wait," she cried, stepping back again, but there was nowhere to go. Timmy's grin got a tiny bit bigger. He leaned his elbows on the windowsill, watching it all happen. He didn't need to say anything, his camera had said it all. Karen thought she could boss everyone around, thought she could scare a quiet kid into doing what she wanted. But she didn't know who she was messing with. Timmy wasn't just quiet, he was clever. He'd turned her own game against her, and now she was the one in trouble. The officers stepped closer to Karen. "You're coming with us," the hat officer said, his voice firm. Karen's face twisted up and she looked like she might cry. "This isn't fair," she shouted, but no one listened. The neighbors started peeking out, Mrs. Lee from her door, Mr. Henderson from his porch. They didn't say much, but their eyes were wide. They couldn't believe it. Karen, the big bossy lady, was finally getting caught. Timmy stayed at his window, his flowers still bright behind him. He didn't cheer or laugh, he just watched, his little grin saying it all.